Clean air, clean water, the material around us, our environment has never been so important, and that's why we should teach our kids to be environmentally friendly. This video is all about tips and ideas on how to do that, and not just the talk, but also the walk. What do I mean by that? It's all about reduce, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's. I also heard about the 4th and the 5th, which is rethink and reconsider. So let's get right into it. I know this is obvious for most people, but please use both sides of the paper. I always get my kids to color, but if they don't feel like coloring anymore, I always save the paper that they haven't used the other side on, and then when they want to color again, I simply give them the other side, a fresh, it looks fresh, but it really isn't, and they will continue coloring. And of course, when you're finished using that said paper that is used on both sides, please recycle. And while you're at the recycling bin, you will find a lot of cool materials that you can use for arts and craft projects. You can be so creative. You would be so surprised with what you can do with what you find in a recycling bin. Yeah. This is an old cereal box, and these lids are excellent for making pallets. And I use the other part of the yogurt container for the water so they can clean their brushes after. You might be wondering how come I don't have matching color lids on our markers, and there's a good reason why. That is not only environmentally friendly, but also cost saving. When we're finished using our markers, when the colors run out, I always keep the lids because you never know when you have a fresh new marker and then you lose the lid on that one because maybe it fell down and went under the couch, who knows? And you don't have time to look for the lid for the new marker. Well, you have a ton of old marker lids that you can use, and you protect your new marker. Because I can't tell you how it drives me nuts that we have all these markers that we had to throw away because we couldn't find the lid. So that's why I really think that this is a great tip for parents. Really get to know what your library offers. When you are borrowing a book instead of buying a book, you are preventing a tree from being cut down. And you might be wondering, hey, what are you talking about? You have all these books behind you. Yes, my husband, he loves to buy books, and having books around you is good for your kids. But most of these books are actually in French, and I bought a lot of French books because our local library doesn't have French books because we're in America, in a small city where French is not really spoken. So I had to buy a lot of books in French when I was in Montreal so that my kids can learn. But I shouldn't have done so much of that because I found out, and this is part of getting to know your library, I found out that our library has Hoopla digital library service, and they have a ton of children books in French, Spanish, all sorts of languages. There are just so many books, and I don't have to read the same 20 books that I have. I can make learning French interesting and fun. So please get to know your library, see if they have things like Hoopla so you don't have to spend money on buying so many books. Like having some books, I guess, is okay. Used books especially, because actually most of the books that I got in French are used. Also, like for example, I found out a few months ago that the library close to us also offers toys that you can borrow. Really well curated, thoughtful, tasteful toys. Things like blocks, magnets. And I don't have to go buy every single type of toy and feel like my kids are missing out because I can just borrow them at the library. I really stress that you should really sit down one day and just really study what your library has to offer. Go on their website. You will see that they have not just books probably available. You can save money that way as well. Also, having some eco habits around the house so that way they learn by example is also helpful. For example, I do something called vermicomposting, and I also have a YouTube video about that on my gardening channel that you can check out. So vermicomposting is basically I keep my vegetable and fruit scraps, feed them to the worms, and their byproducts are fertilizer that I could use in the garden. And yes, we have a garden too, so we're also learning about the cycle of life, and kids are having really hands-on experience with what it means to be environmentally friendly, what our environment is about. There are a lot of crafts that I would love to do, haven't done yet. Like I saw this one about how to recycle your own paper, solar panel projects. There are a lot of new technologies that are about improving our environment that kids can also learn STEM from. Check out your local conservation efforts. For example, the local botanical gardens here, they have endangered plants, they have an edible garden, they have gardens for butterflies, hummingbirds, all sorts of things like that. And you can also volunteer there. That's also another thing that could help kids learn to be environmentally friendly. Volunteer, learn from the experts, not just from the parents. Last but not least, get in the habit of cycling if you can as a family. Try to run errands if it's safe. Like we go to the library, we went to Walmart, the grocery store. These places are within 2 miles of us, and it's really fun, good for your health. Another thing I just want to mention about my personal life, like it's kind of unusual for a person who lives in a small city in America to not have a car. And I chose not to have a car. I have a license. I drive the car that we have sometimes. But I personally don't have a car. I chose to live somewhere that is within 2 miles of a grocery store, of the amenities that we typically use. I don't just talk about saving the environment. I try my best. I know I have other habits that are not so environmentally friendly, like you might see in my other videos that, I used an airplane to travel somewhere, which is why I want to say in closing that we should just try our best to save the environment. Put in a good effort, because it does make a difference. And when you do that and other people see that you're doing that, businesses notice, then the market tries to adapt and try to make things more environmentally friendly, which we have seen. So if more people do that and more efforts are made, then you will see a difference in our environment and things will improve. You don't have to wallow in the depressing statistics. There are all sorts of new technologies happening to improve our environment, and letting your kids know about that, getting library books about it. There are age-appropriate books about the environment you can find at your library. So check it out. I also have a gardening channel where I talk about being environmentally friendly that you can check out. It's called Growing Aware. And I hope that this video was helpful for you and gave you some ideas, inspiration, so that your family can be more sustainable and eco-friendly.